right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to The Holler. I am Justin, founder and editor of it. tnholler.com is where you can find us at the TN Holler on Twitter and Facebook. We also have hollers hollering all across the state. Thanks to your support, your small dollar monthly donations keep us going and growing. Also, shout out to Elisa Parker for her support. If you're buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, do it through her. She supports us. And Abby Rubenfeld, if you need a lawyer for any particular reason, we appreciate her support. Today is a unique show, not only because I'm trying out this background behind me that is a first. Usually you see my window, but I decided to try this out. Let me know what you think. It's a little weird. My head's blurry, but I'm going to stick with it for now. And then also because Representative Bob Ramsey has agreed to join us today, and he doesn't know this, I'm going to tell him right now. He is the very first Republican legislator I've ever had on the Holler. Nobody has ever taken me up on that before, so really do appreciate his willingness to come on here. Representative Ramsey, how are you today?
Oh, doing fine, Justin. I appreciate you.
Okay, well, you should know that you are the first. I am really appreciative to be able to have this conversation, and I don't know if it's why you're willing to do this, but we should start out by letting folks know that you just did have a primary, and you lost your primary. So I guess I want to start by asking you, did you see that coming, and how do you feel about it?
Oh, I did not see it coming. I've served 20 years on the county commission for Blount County and 14 years in the state legislature, and I've always had very good support, even from both parties. But I was kind of taken by surprise. We had a lot of outside influence invested in Blount County, as we did in several other communities across the state, which was intended to influence the elections, and apparently it worked in Blount County as well as several others. So I didn't expect that. I certainly didn't see it coming. And I think one of the big issues is low voter turnout. In the May primary, we only had like 11% turnout, and in the statewide primary, we only had about 15%. So that's just abysmally low. And when you have that few votes, anything can happen. As far as my feelings, it's not my seat. It belongs to the citizens, and I'm comfortable with the fact that they have made their wishes known. But had it been a better turnout, I think the outcome would have been different.
So let's dive into that for a second. You did say that it's not your seat; it belongs to the voters in this article in the Daily Times. But also you mentioned that money came into your race. And so I want to talk about that because I think there's a lot of truth to that. We saw money come into your race, and it also came into Terry Lynn Weaver's race. And the headline in the Tennessean was pro-charter groups spend big in Tennessee elections, help defeat two Republican state House members. And then the Tennessee Education Report talked about Team Kid, which is a PAC funded by Tennesseans for Students' Success, I believe. So the general theme here, Rep. Ramsey, is privatizers didn't appreciate that you didn't fall in line with school privatization. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it is. Terry Lynn Weaver and I were two of the representatives that did not vote for vouchers that Governor Lee proposed. So I think that was a significant part of it. I'm told that we're not the only ones that were defeated. I think Janet Testerman in Knoxville also had the same group that supported an opponent against her, and she was also defeated. And then another lady that I did not know in in Loudoun County. So East Tennessee had some resistance to privatizing and doing away with public education. So I think maybe I'm just going by what people told me. I did not see a paper trail, but apparently there was a group which has been around for several years in East Tennessee that had pretty much spearheaded this effort and parlayed the money from outside the state.
So you just said something that I want to pick up on right there. You said do away with public education, and you said it pretty matter of factly and fairly casually. And it is what a lot of people have been warning about when it comes to vouchers and charters and Governor Lee's education funding overhaul, TISA. And you are not the only one that takes it to such extremes. The originator of vouchers, Milton Friedman, said to Alec in 2006 the ideal way would be to abolish the public school system, how vouchers. So, do you really believe the goal here, Rep. Ramsey, is to do away with public education, which is what you just said?
I do believe that. The my sense is that since integration, there has been an effort nationwide to fund private education with public money. That seems to be the intent, and so vouchers and charter schools, in a lesser manner, have become the tool to do that. My opponent actually did put in his later mailers fund students, not schools. And I think maybe that's a good capsule of what the intent is, which is to alter public education. And so I have been an opponent of that concept, and I know Governor Lee, of course, pretty much the way the governor interprets the philosophy is the way a state goes when a governor has quite a bit of influence. And I think that's been Governor Lee's initiative from the first. So I believe maybe we've even seen some efforts here just since the Hillsdale incident that maybe confirm that.
So, just to kind of bring people up to speed, we've had people joining us as we've been talking, and I just want people to understand Rep. Ramsey is the very first Republican I've ever had on the holler. And anybody who has watched the holler has heard us talk about privatization, has heard us warn about what's happening to public schools. And now we have a Republican representative, a legislator coming on here and saying he's worried about the same things from the inside, from what he's seen. So his quote in the Tennessean, which he just said again here, was that sending your kids to private school on public money has been the holy grail since integration for conservatives. And he's making a link there to integration, highlighting the racist roots of this effort, which is no secret. And Governor Lee has made this his priority from the beginning. And actually, Rep. Ramsey called out Governor Lee and proponents of his voucher program for dangling essentially money to representatives like Rep. Ramsey to get them to vote in support of his vouchers, which barely passed in a vote that had to get held open by Glenn Cassida for like a half an hour while they convinced Jason Zachary to flip. So you're saying that this is essentially the motivating factor for Governor Lee. Where do you think this drive to change public schools comes from? Is it a money grab? Is it ideological? What's at the root, the core of this effort?
Well, I think it's more ideological. Anytime you have an initiative with huge influence in government, you're going to find people that operate with an intent to capitalize monetarily on the initiative. So you're going to find people that are going to try to uh, make hay while the sun's bright. But but I think the initiative, the basic uh, initiative is something that started decades ago, and it's got a tremendous amount of influence, and it's never waned in the magic. So I'm not on here as a Republican or a Democrat, and I'm honored, of course, to find out that I'm the first Republican. I didn't know that, and certainly I'm not here to denigrate my party in any way. But
Feel free to. I'm
no,
just
no,
kidding. I'm just kidding.
no. But there are people that are self-serving in any party, in any group, in any philosophy,
Right.
and those people come to the top when there's a chance to make some money. I don't think that that money is the basis. I think that philosophical rejection of public education and all it entails as far as influence from our general public is really what the nidus or the genesis of this idea is. And we saw that come to a peak, and when integration popped up, and so I must say that I think that's probably where the roots were fertilized, and that's why we're where we are today.
So it's essentially a vilification of the public school system, right? They paint government schools out to be the bad guys, and there's a lot of fear mongering. But one of the things that I always pick up on when it comes to this topic, especially here in Tennessee, is so often the Republicans that are your party that votes for this stuff doesn't want these things in their own district, in their own county. So when they pass vouchers and they push charters, it's usually for Memphis and Nashville and places that there are no Republican legislators. But if you ask them, do you want it in your county, your district? They immediately say absolutely not. Do you find their hypocrisy in that?
Um, I, I I must say that I think you are accurate in that. The when we first began, when I first went to the legislature, we had a tremendous limit on charter schools, and they were only for specific failing school systems, and I've seen that change drastically, and I think maybe it has slowly grown, but the people that in their districts have charter schools, they would come to me and say, "Hey, I hope you guys do have some charter schools and put them in your district, and you can see what a mess it's caused in our districts." And I've heard that many times, and I think maybe what really brought this to a frenzy is the pandemic, and I think children had to stay home, and their parents got a better view of what was going on in the schools, what information they were being exposed to, and for some reason it was upsetting to the point that they have become rather in I guess um, inspired to alter that according to their own desires. And this certainly seems the most likely way to do that is, and I think maybe charters is uh, is maybe the foot in the door, and vouchers are the ultimate target.
I completely agree with you. I would offer that the pandemic was used as an opportunity by those who want to push this agenda to fire up those people that you're talking about, and that it wasn't necessarily an organic flare up, that this is, they took advantage of this situation. There were the mask issue, CRT became a thing, and certainly Tennessee has been the tip of the spear for a lot of this stuff. One of the commenters that I just want to bring up for a second, because people comment along as we talk about these things, and I feel like it's worth addressing. Brooke Rowley says, why shouldn't the tax dollars allotted for each child simply follow the child, private, public, Montessori, homeschool? And I'll give my answer to that, and I'd love to hear yours. But my answer is, as a society, we make an agreement with one another that there are certain things that we're going to fund so that at the base level, there is like a bare minimum that people have access to, and schools, roads, libraries, water, that kind of thing, where we fund them as a public service and we all agree that we're going to be in it together on that front. And if we start to make everything a la carte, where you can just take your money, go wherever you want, keep it, then suddenly society starts to break down, and who really gets hurt are the most vulnerable people in our society. So my answer to that is, you do have the freedom to go to private schools, you do have the freedom to homeschool, but as a society, if we want strong public schools, which is the bedrock of our society and democracy, we have to continue to fund public schools. What would your answer to that be, Rep Ramsey?
Um, I, I would have to agree. I, I, I get comments all the time. We of course have 3 school systems here, which are excellent school systems. We get a huge bang for our buck with Maryville, Alcoa, and Blount County. They exceed all expectations. Um, and I constantly get people that come to me and say, "Hey, look, why am I still paying property taxes in proportion? Say I don't have any children in school. I pay property taxes that go to support county school system as well as city school systems, and I don't have a child in either one." And I tell them, somebody worked in an assembly line somewhere where you grew up, and they paid taxes so that you could go to school. And that's the way that we have designed the system to create opportunity. And if we do anything, which vouchers assigning the money to a student would certainly savage the funding of our public school system, then everybody loses. Um, we One of the most amazing statistics I saw, or maybe statements that I've seen in the last few years, was that these people that design and plan jail and incarceration systems, correction facilities, can go to a community and predict how many jail cells they're going to need in the next decades by how many children graduate from 3rd grade without being able to read. So I think it benefits everybody to have a healthy uh, public school system, a public school system that has what they need to encourage and bring opportunity to everyone. Some people are blossom slowly, and so if you do want a higher level, then you should be willing to invest in that. But we also should be willing to invest in a program that will provide opportunity to everyone.
And so I just want people to understand Rep Ramsey's opinion about this, which he has stood by as these privatization efforts have happened, seems to be why he just got primaried and beat by these PACs pouring money into his race. And he's not alone. Terry Lynn Weaver is another one who voted against Governor Lee's privatization overhaul. We call it a privatization overhaul, TISA. I think one of the issues that I have with Governor Lee on this is, Brooke is saying, well, why not just let money follow the kid? And, I think that's at least an honest way of looking at it. But Governor Lee is teeing up a system to do that while also trying to tell us he's fighting for public schools, cares about public schools, values public schools. It feels like there's something kind of dishonest about the way this has been presented to Tennessee, because I think if he had said what Brooks says, which I have actually seen him say in a town hall before, people wouldn't want that. People would vote against that. So he has to pretend that he's strengthening public schools while actually teeing up a system that Brooke is talking about. Is that a fair way to look at it?
I truly believe it is, and I think the discussion that he had with the Hillsdale representative may have been more of an accurate depiction of the concept and value that they place on public education.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and that's why he didn't distance himself from it, right? Because he agrees. Okay, you don't have to go with me on that, but I'll take that laugh for what it is. Uh, anyway, so I appreciate you being willing to stand on that, and the stance that you've taken. One of the things that we're seeing coming up soon is these Hillsdale affiliated charter schools. You mentioned Hillsdale. Obviously, I think people by now know Hillsdale trash teachers said it's easy to teach, basically, and then wouldn't back away from it. Governor Lee has asked them to bring 50 to 100 charter schools to Tennessee, wouldn't really back away from that after this all happened. And then we've seen 4 Hillsdale affiliated charter schools apply for charters in local counties, Jackson, Williamson, Clarksville, and one more, Montgomery, and get rejected, resoundingly rejected. Now they're appealing to a state appeal board that is loaded, I believe, with Governor Lee handpicked pro-charter people. Do you think they are going to overrule these local school boards? And what does it say about Governor Lee's and your party, aside from you, the commitment to local control, that they're willing to let a state board overrule these local counties?
Yes, I opposed that piece of legislation when it came up, and in the same frame, the designation requirement, state requirement that all school board elections be partisan. The preparations have been made to make this a slam dunk, where the local authorities, local education authorities really have no power. And so I think that's the preparation has been made fully and totally. And we here in Blount County, we love our school systems. They're exceptional. We had a charter tribe here maybe 8 years ago to form, and actually sued the the county school system, and it cost them $200,000 to fight that suit. And they had the authority at that time, but it's going to be a totally different situation now. So there is a charter school in the wings. It's been applied for in Blount County, and I think everybody is going to be amazed at what pressure that puts on our other 3 school systems. And the preparations have been made legislatively that that there's really going to be no options but to approve it.
If things keep going the way they're going in Tennessee with these privatization efforts, what do you think our schools look like in 20 years?
I'm guessing there will be some voucher program that finds favor with the public, and what public schools we have left are going to be diminished hugely. So I foresee that some will gain and others will lose precipitously, which will make all of us as citizens of our communities lose. And the public healthy public education system means a healthy a healthy society and character of a community. And so, if we're going to deal with all these other issues of prosperity and law enforcement, incarceration, mental health, all these other things, I mean, we've got to have a healthy public education system. And I think it's going to be way lopsided the way things are going.
Right. I agree with you. And people should also understand you have also been a proponent of Medicaid expansion, which was something that your party did not get behind, where that's a position that you took. Uh, just to put a finer point on this about Governor Lee and what's going on with education, when Governor Lee says he's a friend to public schools in this state, does that strike you as disingenuous?
Uh, I, I don't think so. I have never. I've watched his legislation come forward, and when he first proposed the TISA, it actually failed in committee until he mitigated the impact on the public education system. So he may be somewhat sensitive, and I hope that he is, to maintaining a healthy public education system. But his actions uh, don't reflect that. But all of his actions, some of them do. But so I think maybe with his new funding system, he did try to refund the BEP system, and there were a lot of bonuses in it for public education if we can maintain that. But it just depends on where he leads the legislature in the next decade.
Well, Rep. Ramsey, I appreciate you coming on here. I just kind of want to end here with a just a question in general. We've just seen, you lost this primary. We're seeing a whole new crop of, especially Republican representatives come in. It's certainly the most replacement that I've seen since I've been watching. Um, what do you think about the direction that your party is headed in general, both in the state and federal level? I'm not going to lead you at all with my opinion on it. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about where your party is and where it's headed.
I think one of the best descriptive terms that people have used for America in general is divided, whether it's parties, churches, legislatures, Congress. Division seems to be the centerpiece for moving forward, which has been a barrier. And so I think it's time for everybody to step back and say, where can we work together? Uh, and so that's what I would hope for. I hope these new folks. I'm not going to criticize anybody in any manner. I'm not going to vilify them or speak badly. But I would just encourage everyone to step back, take a breath, and see where can we work together, party and party, church and church, church and party, party and state, and where can we work together to move forward and make life better and bring peace and some sense of harmony.
Well, I think those are wise words. Appreciate it. Do you feel like telling us who you plan on supporting in the governor's race in November?
I I I, I know Governor Lee, so I will probably support Governor Lee.
Okay.
Uh, he has shown uh, uh, skill and leadership. There's no question about that, and he's taken some courageous stands and some controversial issues that I agree with him on. So I will certainly be supporting him and and begging him in the meantime to please uh, take a breath and see where we can work together.
All right, Rep. Ramsey, thank you for coming on. Spread the word. See, I didn't bite. Maybe some of your Republican legislator colleagues would be willing to come on here also. I've invited them. So I know some people watch the holler and see me only talking to Democrats. I think it's because I don't ask them, but I do ask them to come on. You're the first one ever to take me up.
I didn't realize it was so perilous.
It's not, right? I don't bite. All right, Rep. Ramsey, thanks so much. Stay in touch. Good luck with whatever you do next.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Take care. So that was Representative Bob Ramsey in East Tennessee. Thank you guys for joining us with that. Let's see. I'll add, it's refreshing to see without the holler, bash them, discuss issues without looking for a quick one-liner while shoving a camera in their face. He believes they have good intentions. Well, I will say, Brooke, that they don't often want to stop and talk to me. And if you've watched the holler, when they do stop and talk to me, I do talk to them. Like, I've had long conversations with some of the most extreme, with Bruce Griffey, all kinds of people, but most of the time they don't talk to me. So I have only a certain amount of time to ask them questions as they're trying to run by me. And it ends up looking like I'm yelling at them and getting in their face. And, it's a fair criticism, but I will say I want to talk to them. I try to talk to them. Most of the time they won't talk to me. And a lot of times they'll just, have these quips back to me or whatever. But, for the most part, when they stop and talk to me, I'm willing to have that conversation. I ask them to come on here. So I do want you to know that. But yes, do I enjoy a quick one-liner when, Jack Johnson is running by me? Yeah, I do. I'll cop to that. But that was Rep. Ramsey telling you basically that vouchers and charters and privatization, the TISA bill that changed the funding of our education system in Tennessee, it's privatization. So they are trying to steer public dollars to private schools to expand private charter schools, private Christian schools, private, ideological schools. That's where this is going. And Rep. Ramsey wouldn't go along with it. He voted no. And so they just primaried him, dumped $500,000 into those races through this Team Kid pack, and now he's no longer there. And so even though he's being generous with Governor Lee and saying he'll still support him, saying that he has good intentions, you really can't support Governor Lee in public schools at the same time. You just can't. And so if public schools are what you care about in this state, then it's time to replace Governor Lee. And when you ask me, Brooke, why can't we just take our money and go wherever we want our kid to go with it? What you're advocating for is essentially the disintegration of our civil society, of the things that we chip into together to create our cities, our counties, our school systems. We need to put in through taxes into our society so that it thrives, so that it's healthy, so that we can spend on things, so that we can keep things up. If we start saying, I'm only going to pay for what I use, well, then we don't have a community anymore. We don't have and I'm not saying that there's no waste, and I'm not saying that there isn't bad government. I'm not saying, everything we spend it on is perfect. I think we should have conversations about those things and get specific. But we can't start saying, oh, government is bad in general and, everything we do is bad, because the flip side of that is these things don't happen. We don't have schools. We don't have roads. We don't have clean water. We don't have a place for our kids to grow up. So we should have these conversations about how we want to spend this money and what the right thing to do is. But vilifying government is helping people who believe that unbridled greed and unbridled capitalism is the way to go. And I'll tell you right now, you may not trust government in general, but you shouldn't trust corporations in general either. So we need a balance. We need conscious capitalism, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it democratic socialism, whatever you want to call it. We need a balance of capitalism and, community, socialism, programs, lifting up the bottom, lifting up people that need it the most. To me, the best example of this is that we don't have universal health care in this country when all these other civilized countries have it. Here, you can go broke when you get sick. That's not how it should be. It doesn't need to be how it is. And it's only like that because of unbridled capitalism and greed. And I think we see that showing its face. I see that as dollars going to that child, no more, no less. Just keep the dollars attached to the child. Yeah, but it is no more, no less, because what ends up happening is you fragment it, you steer it to private organizations, and now you don't have the resources going to these public schools. So the bottom drops out and it hurts the people with the least. It hurts the least of these the most. The number one education system in the entire world is in Finland. And in Finland, you're not allowed to have a private school. I'm not advocating for that. But what it does is it forces the wealthy and the poor kids into the same situations, and it lifts up the bottom. So you have poor kids going to school with wealthy kids, parents with resources helping the parents without resources, and everybody's in it together. And Finland has the best public school system. Now, there's other issues also that they do well that we don't, and not all of these things are fixed by money, and there are issues. I'm not saying it's perfect, but when we fragment, the point is when we fragment, when we split apart, when we are all in it for ourselves, it's the people with the least that get hurt the most. And that's true with healthcare also. So if we had a baseline, a Medicare for all, and then with private money, if you have money and you want to go get private insurance to supplement it, you should be able to do that. But we need a baseline. We shouldn't have people going broke because they get sick. So, and I see Gapper saying Finland doesn't have the population numbers we have. That gets used all the time. And I'm not saying it's easy, but we're the richest country in the world. We should be able to do this. I reject the notion that because we have more people, we can't do it. We also have more money. So, these are all focus grouped knocks. And I encourage I had him on here once, Wendell Potter, I think his name is. He used to work for Cigna as an insurance executive, and he helped come up with all of these things. Canada has a better system, and waiting lines are too long, and all of these knocks on Medicare for all. And now he's a Medicare for all advocate. He used to be an insurance executive, and he came up with he said he has a trouble sleeping at night because he helped come up with all of these knocks against universal health care. And now he spends all of his time advocating for it. So the things that come to your mind when I talk about these things, it's not by accident. They have been hammered into us, drilled into us over and over again by people who have a lot of money at stake and who have captured our government, honestly. And I do think that Republicans more than Democrats, but Democrats too, some of them. And they serve special interests, and what the people want does not end up passing more often than not. I think if you represent.us, they have a study, or Princeton did a study that shows that public opinion of legislation doesn't even impact it at all, but money impacts it completely. So how do you solve that problem? I don't have an easy answer for that, but I do know that you have to elect people who will at least call it what it is and stop taking that money. It's like communism. It can work with a very small group. But, again, I just reject the notion that we are incapable of having universal health care in the greatest country in the world with the most money in the world. It's just illogical. All of these other countries do it. If you ask any of these other countries if they would trade healthcare systems with us, they say no. None of these countries with universal healthcare are trying to decide if they should keep it. So that's an illusion. And I reject the notion that if we're such a great country, we should be able to figure out universal healthcare. We have way more non-producers. All right, so now we're getting into the Mitt Romney stuff. I don't want to go down that road. But to bring it back to Rep. Ramsey, he took a stand against public education being privatized. He's a Republican. He just sat here and he told us everything that we've been telling you about privatization, charters, vouchers, Governor Lee's agenda, everything we've been telling you. Representative Ramsey just backed it up. He's a Republican. And so, I appreciate him coming on here. I appreciate him telling the truth. I wish more Republicans would do it, but you see what happens. If you take a stand, if you tell the truth, you get primaried and you lose your seat. And that's why fewer and fewer of them do. I feel like them going after Terry Lynn Weaver and Rep. Ramsey was less about going after Terry Lynn Weaver and Rep. Ramsey. It was more about making an example of them so that anybody else that thinks about taking a stand like that against Governor Lee's privatization agenda will know you're going to end up like Weaver and Ramsey. You're not going to be here anymore. And the only way around that is if more of them do it, safety in numbers, and have some guts. And I just don't know that that's in the cards anytime soon. But I appreciate him coming on here. I appreciate hearing from somebody across the aisle. I try to do it more. It doesn't happen enough. And how are we going to pay for it? Yeah. I mean, again, like all of the things that like they focus grouped, these are all the standard talking points. And, I just completely reject the notion that we can't have universal health care in this country. Point blank. We can, and we should. Keep following the holler. Appreciate y'all. Take care.